Hey there, Stampers, and welcome to another Step It Up video. This one is a really simple card, and I literally just took it one step and one step, so there's nothing really fancy. Anybody, any stamper, beginner can do this easily, all three. So this is the level 1 card, very simple. And then this is the step 2 card, and I think this one's my favorite. And then this is step 3. This is a very simple card, but it uses a blender pen, which I haven't done. I always use my dry aqua painter, so I wanted to go ahead and show you how to do this. This is 2.5 by 3 Whisper White. The stamp sets I'm using today are Lovely as a Tree and Sincere Salutations. And we're going to start by stamping. I'm using a non-Stampin' Up product to stamp the tree, just because I'm using the blender pen, and it may be fine with the other ink. I just prefer this one. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this tree as close to the top as I can. Make sure it's nice and wet. Get a good coverage. And then I'm going to take my palette. It's not shutting. My palette, and I have some Old Olive and some chocolate chip already on the palette. And I know a couple of people have asked me to demonstrate using a blender pen. I don't use it a lot, but I think it's perfect for this type of look. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is not start with the blender pen. I'm going to take the Old Olive using the wide tip, and in the areas that are already really dark with the brown, I'm going over in Old Olive, and I'm not coloring, I'm tapping. Much like, because foliage on a tree is, some areas are going to be dark, some are going to be light from where the light comes through. So I'm following the dark pattern that was done with the brown ink, and this way I'm going to get a darker green than when I go back and fill in with my blender pen using the same ink, Old Olive. But you can see on the finished card that it's the color density is varied, just like it would be in a tree in nature. So by tapping, that's why this is a perfect project for any level stamper. Because even if you kind of mess up, it's fixable. Anywhere you see that dark brown, go ahead and tap color on with your pen, with your marker. So that's the first part of the tree. And the second part is using the blender pen. And I know some people will use the ink that's already there and pull the color into the area. I don't really care for that method because the paper tends to get ripped up when, you know, coloring a lot. It can withstand a couple strokes, but not a lot. So by picking up the ink from the blender pen and then tapping it on much the same way I would use my dry aqua painter or the other, you just have to keep going back to get more ink. But you can see, and you can stroke it through easily in, you know, certain areas where you want it lighter or you just don't want, but I think that looks kind of, there's too much of a change from really dark to really light, so I tap on more color. And by tapping it on, it allows you to do another application rather than just stroking it on, which kind of sometimes rips up the paper. I imagine you could use watercolor paper and you could not have as much of that going on. But I don't tend to buy it, so again, cheap. This is what I always have on hand, and so I tend to use what I have on hand. So you can see the process is not difficult. it's going to take a little more time. Not a lot, but because it's just one little tree. But you can see, I'm not going to do this for all 3 cards. I'm just going to do the one image, and then, because it's the same image. I didn't do anything different on any of the step cards. So in this side of the tree, you can see that the artist, the light's coming from this area. So I really left some open spots where the light would hit, and less over here. I add more color because it's already darker. But it's really quite foolproof. Then the only thing you want to go back and do are these little bits where there is some foliage, but it's not a full branch. So you want a light tapping of some green in these areas. Some old olive. It's really that easy. Isn't it pretty though? I think it produces a lovely image. And then we're going to do the same thing with the trunk in chocolate chip. And for the blender pen, I know the tip is stained, but you can see you just kind of get off the excess ink and it goes back to being clear. So you pick up some chocolate chip, and again I start in the darker areas and blend through, because remember the sun is casting a shadow on this side. And then I go back and dot these little bits. Darker on the darker ones, lighter on the other. And then if you want to play with it, there are some lines already on here, and I just go back and kind of dot them and add in, kind of creates that next layer of layering color, and shadow and light. So that easy. Okay. And that's it for your image. Really simple. Level 1 card, I took some chocolate chip ink on a sponge and I went around the edges, and I take, I use my Stampin' Mist bottle for these smaller cards, and I make a knot, and it always fits, and it's kind of easier to do a knot like this to me than trying to just tie it willy-nilly. It's better when you have something to tie it around, to me. I should have done this beforehand. But anyway, you get the idea. You're going to fuss with it and make it pretty or whatever. And then you just slip it off and cut it down the center with your snips. And there you have a nice, perfect little knot. And you're going to hear that on the cardstock and wrap it around. You're probably going to want to trim your edges. I did dovetails on the sample cards, but any kind of knot is fine, or trimmed edge. So you're just going to wrap that on. I put adhesive on the back and wrap it on there. You're going to layer it onto a chocolate chip card base. Pretty simple. I used Thinking of You. Let me go ahead and do it. I used Stays on Black, so it would show up on the chocolate chip. I figured this could be good for, you know, if you needed a sympathy card, or you're just, or masculine birthday, or just about anything. You just needed a card, and it could be fine for a man or a woman. I like these all-purpose cards. And then as a little touch, I took my matte pack and just ran a few lines, just drawing the eye to the sentiment that's kind of hard to see. That's step 1. Step 2 is still the same card base and the same image, except this time I took a chocolate chip matte and an old olive matte, and then I just layered the image, still using the same old olive ribbon. I put that down, And then instead of using just dots, I made 3 holes and I used Old Olive brads. And you can see, very simple. For level 3, step 3 card, it's the same thing. The exact same image layered with the ribbon. The difference is I took a piece of Old Olive that I used my matte pack to make holes all the way around to sort of bring out that border. I added a chocolate chip matte, and again I just put the thinking of you and the 3 brads, and I layered it just like that. So you can see it was really easy to do, and all 3 cards are lovely. So let me show you these again. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. I hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you next week. Bye!